Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us on this Wednesday evening. My name is Ashik Sadiq, and I'm one of the national co-chairs of Democratic Socialists of America. And we have hundreds of people joining us on this call, and we know that so much is happening right now. We're dealing with such an onslaught of chaos in this second Trump administration. It's now 2 months in, and this is an onslaught that's meant to overwhelm us and make us feel powerless. Like just in the past 24 or 48 hours, so many things have been happening that we could easily loop into a call to talk about right now. But we're really here to frame the ways that we are organizing all over the country. DSA is the largest socialist organization in the United States, the biggest in many decades in the United States. And we are organizing in all sorts of ways around the country. We're going to frame a few of the central ways that our members have been throwing down to support federal workers, to support trans rights, to support migrant rights. And we we really want to emphasize that we are not powerless when we're organized. Like we are continuing to fight for somebody we don't know all over the country, and what will get us through this period is going to be solidarity. That is solidarity across differences. That is combining all the different ways that we've been organizing, or if we're new to organizing, like plugging in together and figuring out what is the best way we can take collective action. So we're going to be framing ways that you can take action today, including throughout the call. We'll be dropping links in the chat throughout. And we're going to end with the phone bank and call to action. So after we're done with speakers, we're going to ask you to stay on if you can and join us in taking action together. It's like a low lift action that's going to be as easy as possible for you to plug into. But we just want to keep emphasizing there are many levels of action that we can take together. And it's important to, to make it as easy as possible for as many people as possible to take whatever action they're able to within our means. It's going to take a lot to collectively defeat the fascism and authoritarianism that is rising in this country. We have to rise faster than that. And the good news is that there are many ways that we are rising to the occasion in this period. And we're continuing to build beyond this chaotic period toward a world where we all have dignity and liberation. So I just want to start by, well, first of all, this is actually exactly the time to have iftar. Like this is the month of Ramadan. And I was motivated to bring that up by the art. This illustration is by a DSA member named Margaret Palmquist that drew Donald Trump and Elon Musk as like spooky jinn, like rising out of a lamp. So if you check out the promo materials for this, you can see in detail the illustration. I'm blocking the lamp that they're rising out of. But I think it kind of frames, this is a chaotic period. It feels very, like almost like occult forces are running the economy. But really, we know as socialists, it's capitalism. It's very powerful people who are running things for the profits of very few versus the many. So you're going to hear about that all throughout this call. Just today, this morning, like I was at a protest to demand the release of Mahmoud Khalil, who's being unlawfully detained by our government for protesting for Palestine. This is something that DSA and many organizations around the country are showing up to protests and rallies to emphasize that this is not something we can tolerate. This is a clear escalation that's meant to test what they can get away with. So I'm going to ask you all, if you haven't already, to sign on to a petition that's going to be dropped in the chat. This is something that we need to be, this is one of many canaries in the coal mine where they're testing what they can get away with. But again, the good news is that many people are organizing and showing why this is not acceptable. So I'm just, without further ado, I want to introduce our next speaker, who I'm very excited to introduce. Olúfẹ Táíwò is one of the great active intellectuals of our moment who's been writing about all sorts of things, but especially about how in this period of the second Trump administration, we need to focus on the ways we organize to win collectively and not let the forces of the people in power divide us amongst each other. We need to figure out how to unite and win and be focused on organizing as many people as possible and not just talking to the people who are in the rooms and in the spaces that we're in right now. We need to activate as many people as possible. We need to be active and on guard against all the ways that scapegoat politics are being used to keep us divided and unite to win. So without further ado, I will hand it over to Femi.
Thanks, Ashik. Thanks everybody for coming out, for being part of this, really important event at a really important time. I want to talk about solidarity, just as Ashik was just explaining, and the two kinds of solidarity that are out there. one of which is for us and one of which is against us, even if it's people who are otherwise on our side kind of promoting it. So Astra Taylor and Leah Hunt Hendricks talk about a kind of solidarity that they call transformative solidarity, which is just the recognition of our interconnectedness along with an action beyond that, just intellectual recognition, right? What do we do with it? We attempt to build bonds of commonality across our differences. You're different from me. Both of us are different from a third person, but we can all join in, say, a union and bargain collectively, right? Putting our different positions, maybe our different salaries, maybe our different bargaining units together, and trying to get the boss to give us concessions. So those of us who have been in that kind of activism, which I assume as many of us on this call know that kind of solidarity well. But unfortunately, maybe we know the evil twin kind of solidarity well as well, which you could call counter solidarity. It's the kind of solidarity that each boss has with the other bosses, the class solidarity of the capitalist class. It's also, unfortunately, not just limited to the capitalists and not even just limited to the right wing, but it's also the kind of solidarity fostered by people joining ranks against people that they scapegoat, people that they blame for our political situation. And we saw a rash of this in the kind of response from people to both the election of Trump the second time and to the first disastrous days of his second administration, whether it was pundits or even neighbors and friends blaming demographic groups for the rise of Trump. Whether it was Latinos voting for Trump or the Muslim vote totals in response to the genocide in Gaza, or even the uncommitted movement as a movement itself, or Black men supporting Trump in low numbers, but numbers higher than with Black women. There have been ways of singling out parts of the population and blaming them for what we're seeing in our current moment that might fuel a kind of solidarity amongst the people that aren't named by those demographic groups, but I think ultimately work to undermine our political power because solidarity isn't just a commitment to being nice or agreeable or hospitable to other people, but it's an ingredient of doing the thing we talked about just a second ago, you know, moving from an intellectual recognition of our interconnectedness to a kind of action, building the union to work together, building the commonality across our various differences. The one thing that I have to say about the current moment, other than that, it fucking sucks, is that, it is an opportunity of a kind. I'm not an accelerationist by temperament, but as someone who thinks like an organizer, as someone who does organizing, I can't help but notice that this version of the right wing is especially mask off. Gone are the clean-cut Romney conservatives, and ascendant are the WWE brand of conservatives. And alongside them, or I should say above them, is a right-wing billionaire from an apartheid state pulling the strings of all the political operatives. There's never been a more dramatic demonstration of, I think, exactly the analysis that many of us in this room would put forward, which is that, the forces of the right and the forces of capital often collude. And the tighter they collude, the worse it is for everyone else. The worse it is for the working class. The best organizer at the end of the day is the boss. And when the boss makes it clear who and what they serve, it's up to us to do the same on our side. So I'm very grateful that we'll be hearing in just a second from Eric about what's going on with the Federal Unionist Network and Taylor from CIR, SEIU, and hearing about our opportunities to join forces with federal workers, extend hands in solidarity, and explain to the rest of the world that may not know what we're about or know what's valuable about our kind of solidarity, why it's worthwhile. So moving forward, we have an opportunity to build a material base for our kind of solidarity, which means building out and building the power of existing unions, especially workers' unions, but including debtors' unions, tenants' unions, any bases of popular power. And we can do that not just building by these institutions directly, but building the kind of ecology that supports them, supporting meeting spaces and bookstores and recreational spaces where people can hang out and trade information and build community together by shoring up our local information networks, whether it's the rapid response networks that we build to warn our neighbors about ICE encroachment, or whether it's building local news outlets so that we can contest the kind of billionaire hegemony that they're building over information. But as we do all of these, and hopefully as we do all of these well, we'll find that we're also building a cultural base and not just a material base for our kind of solidarity, which is that we'll be demonstrating to everyone in action and not just in word that we'll stick up for them, and that we won't leap at any excuse to blame them for our problems or to bargain away their lives for our own health, safety, and comfort. And we do that simply by standing up for one another. So I'm grateful to be on this call and grateful to hear from the other people on this call about how we can do that. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that framing. And check out in the chat two of Femi's recent articles. One is in These Times called Scapegoats and Solidarity, and another is in Teen Vogue called Donald Trump and His Allies Don't Really Care What Kind of Leftist You Are. So up next, I'm very excited to introduce Eric Blanc, who is a professor of labor studies at Rutgers University, a writer of the Labor Politics newsletter on Substack, and most recently, the author of We Are the Union, How Worker-to-Worker Organizing is Revitalizing Labor and Winning Big. Thank you so much for joining us, Eric.
Yeah, it's great to see all of you comrades. Thanks to co-panelists and to DSA for organizing. So I'm going to jump straight in because I know we're always crunched for time and the times are dire. So the reality is it'd be very hard to overstate the stakes of the federal workers' fight back right now. And I want to explain why that's the case. As I'm sure you all know, what we have is a handful of the richest men on earth looting the government for their own private profit and for their own control. And what that poses is not only a direct threat to the material interests of working people, because how are you going to get Social Security without workers? How are you going to get education without funding for schools in the Department of Education? How are you going to get Medicaid? This is something that just affects so many people in ways that they don't even realize yet and are starting to realize. But even if we just leave aside that for now, what Trump has to do is break the federal workers movement to have full control over the governmental apparatus, including to impose his illegal reactionary agenda. One of the blocks last time around was that he didn't have full control over the bureaucracy to impose his agenda. And now, through any means necessary, he has to crush the back of the federal workforce in order to be able to impose that. So the stakes aren't just important for federal workers and federal services, but for everybody, because there's a reason, and maybe it comes as a bit of a surprise, that why is Trump going so hard against these federal workers and federal services? This is like a really stupid political move on a certain sense because it's so unpopular. It's really like not smart politics in a certain sense, but he has to, because he felt that he had to unleash Musk in order to take full control of the governmental apparatus, and frankly also to wage an ideological battle over public services, over who the enemies are. The enemies aren't the rich people, the enemies are the parasite class of bureaucrats. All of this, BS is part of an offensive that we have to check. And so the stakes of what would happen if they are successful are the following. First of all, the goal of Musk is very open, is to privatize everything. He's talking about privatizing the Postal Service. He's openly talking about destroying and privatizing Social Security. So the existence of any public services are being put under ideological attack, if not direct attack already. And then just for the sake of democracy, you need to have some checks on the authoritarian ambitions of the Trump and Musk regime. The federal workforce at this point is the most important blockage of these ambitions. And then more generally, if they're able to smash the federal labor movement, especially if there's not mass public backlash that creates a huge cost for them, they're going to go after everybody next in the labor movement, and then against people who have even fewer resources, trans activists, Palestine activists. We're already seeing this. So what does it look like? What does it mean? Think about what it means that just a few days ago, they abrogated the collective bargaining agreement of every single TSA worker. This is insane. This is just an illegal move, and they're basically saying, okay, who's going to stop us, right? This is about 50,000 workers who now don't have a union, at least on paper, at least not legally, because Trump and Musk and company decided that, well, that's too bad. Think about what that means for every boss in the country that wants to get rid of their existing union. If they realize that, oh, I don't actually have to bargain with my teachers union. I don't have to bargain with the Starbucks workers union. I don't have to bargain with this union that we've had for 30, 40 years. It can be unleashed class offensive against all unions, all working people. Think about Patco 1981, but on steroids. That's the danger. Okay. On the other hand, and this is the more optimistic side, is I actually think that we have a very good chance of winning this. Truly, and it goes a little bit what Olúfẹ was talking about. This is a policy and political battle that on a certain sense is extremely risky and stupid for Musk and Donald Trump because it's so unpopular. Even Republican base who might have all sorts of racist and reactionary ideas want Medicaid. Even then they want Social Security and they're freaking out. Honestly, if you look at the cracks, even Trump is walking some of this back because they realize the amount of backlash that is already spurred. So my power analysis is that if we can create enough public backlash amongst federal workers, and particularly in the community, far more than what we currently have. What we've currently had has already gotten some sort of partial retreat, but nowhere near what we need. But if you have tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people in the streets defending public services, federal services, fighting against the firings, I think it's very likely that Trump will throw Musk under the bus, right? I don't think he's so ideologically committed to all of this that he wouldn't be forced to retreat and throw Musk under the bus. If it comes down to it. And we've already seen what that could look like. So this is a winnable battle, but it's going to require all of you, without exception, to go full on to wage this. The Federal Unionist Network has taken a lead, and it's really exciting. There's a day of action. I know a lot of you help support. But now there's a brand new escalating campaign of rapid response against firings and against the cuts to services. It's called a Let Us Work, Save Our Services campaign. So I encourage all of you, and maybe folks could drop it in the chat. All you have to do to sign up for the rapid response is to go to savepublicservices.com. So it's savepublicservices.com, and then sign up, and then you'll be notified immediately, literally immediately, when there's an action in your town to fight back against these illegal firings and against these cuts. So please sign up on that website, but then most of all, get involved locally in these committees that are going to start doing very exciting, very creative, escalating actions to make the political crisis untenable for Musk and Trump and turn around this fight and to save our country and save the working class. So thank you all to your comrades, and look forward to everybody else's comments.
All right, thank you so much, Eric. Now, one of my favorite things that can happen on a Zoom call is about to happen. So we wanted to get a federal worker to speak to show what was happening, and it was just our luck that New York City DSA New York City organizers who are federal workers have been having a meeting right now, so they're about to call in live. So I'm going to hand it over to Chris Fasano from the Federal Unionist Network to tell us more about what they're doing on the ground.
So thank you. Thank you, everyone. We are calling in from a meeting of the Federal Unionist Network. I'm a former employee of the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. I was illegally fired about 4 weeks ago. And we have a growing coalition here in New York City that consists of federal unions and federal workers and a number of other public sector unions and private unions and really workers all throughout New York City. And this marks the 5th week of actions here in New York City. We have been attending pickets every week. We've had rallies. We have a march that is coming up. And what I'll say as a federal worker who used to be a UAW member is that having the support of local unions and critically having the support of DSA members has really made all the difference here in New York City. There are, I think people are angry. Federal workers are upset, certainly, that they are being fired or threatened with being fired. At my agency, they're talking about eliminating it so that it's left to 5 people, say 5 men with a phone in a room in DC. So people are angry, and they're angry that they can't serve the American public. And they're angry that the American public are going to be going without these goods and services. I used to bring cases against the worst financial actors who committed unfair and abusive practices against consumers. And now those consumers are left undefended, and the likes of Trump and Musk can take advantage of them. So there is a lot of anger, but federal unions are not the most active of unions. There's no right to strike, so there isn't much experience doing this kind of labor action. So I think one of the most helpful things that DSA can do, that local unions can do, that supporters can do, is join the FUN network. Join FUN, attend the call tomorrow, and everyone on this call is an organizer. People come into DSA with a wealth of experience organizing actions, whether it's through their unions or elsewhere. And it's that know-how, how to put on an action, the logistical part of it, the media part of it, that is so critical to making these actions successful. And it's where federal workers need help. And I think here in New York City is a great example of federal workers coming together with DSA and with local unions and building a sustainable culture of activism. And right now, we went from, I remember the day after I was fired, we had a handful of unions walk the picket line. Right now behind me, we have 60 federal employees representing 12 different agencies, all throughout the federal government. And we are building out a campaign, and this will go as long as we have to defeat Doge, to defeat Musk, to defeat Trump. So I'm calling on all of you to join that call tomorrow. Come to a fun event and bring your know-how, bring your experience. Federal workers need your help. And if we stand shoulder to shoulder, we will defeat Trump. We will defeat Musk. All right. Thank you, everyone.
All right. Thank you so much. Love a live call-in. All right. So this is a call that we're representing a bunch of different organizations and organizers across networks. We're part of DSA, Democratic Socialists of America. We know lots of you may not be part of an organization, so just wanted to start by asking, we're going to have a little poll if you're on Zoom. We want to ask, are you already a DSA member or not? Just curious. You don't have to answer if you don't want to, but we'll have to get a sense of who's organized or not. This is a great time to join any organization. If you're not part of one, it might as well be DSA. All right, seeing some live responses come in. And yeah, also in the chat, I see a lot of chatter. That is very nice to see. Feel free to keep saying where you're calling in from. It's amazing to see that we have hundreds of people from all over the country. And there's a ton of organizing happening. DSA has 200 chapters all over the country, in almost every state in the country, including DC. So yeah, there's lots happening. And all right, seeing almost 80% of you have responded already in just a minute while I'm chattering. So I think we can end the poll and share the results. I like what I'm seeing. I'll just emphasize, I like seeing that so many of you are not DSA members. So I'm going to hand it over to my national co-chair, Megan Romer, to explain why you should join DSA if you're not already a member. So I'll hand it over to Megan.
Thanks, Ashik, and thanks to everyone who's here tonight. This is really exciting. We have hundreds of people on this call, and I just saw that about a third of you are not, in fact, DSA members. So I want you right now to go to dsausa.org/join. It is very important right now, more than ever. I mean, we're hearing all this, like all these people talking about all these ways that we are pushing back. The most important thing we can do is to get organized. And DSA is the largest socialist organization in the United States. We are here, we are fighting, we have socialists in every state in the country. We have campaigns in every major city. We are not doing just one thing. We are attacking this beast from every side. We are helping from tenants unions. We are getting socialists elected into office. We are supporting the labor movement. We are doing mutual aid projects and trans rights advocacy, and everything that needs fighting, there's somewhere in DSA that fight is happening. So please join us now. We are so much stronger together. We are so much more powerful together. And we also, when we collect our resources and work together, we also can collect our courage, and our collective courage really makes it a lot easier to face down these serious fights. So please join us, dsausa.org/join. It keeps rolling through the chat, and it's going to keep rolling through. We're going to keep pushing it out all night. We need you. Your chapter needs you locally. We need you nationally. We need each other. We are building the movement of the working class that is going to take on the biggest capitalist takedown that this country has seen. So join us, get ready to fight. Bring your courage, because we all need to share it, and solidarity to all of you.
All right, thank you, Megan. And yeah, click that link if you haven't already. So up next, we're going to hear from some of our members on the ground in chapters who are leading some of this work. So I'm going to hand it over first to Lyra, who's based in Washington, D.C.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Lyra, she, her. I'm one of the co-chairs of the Metro DC Bodily Autonomy campaign. We organize on trans rights and reproductive justice issues. So, as everybody's aware, Trump and his crew, the fascists, hit the ground running really hard, especially with their targeting of the marginalized groups they were scapegoating for, of course, all of the supposed ills that they claim needed fixing and changing. They came hard at the trans community. They've continued coming hard at us. I think most people are probably pretty aware of the executive order, which was targeting gender-affirming care for kids based on federal funding for medical facilities. Here in DC, within 24 hours of the announcement of that executive order, Children's National Hospital, which is one of the leading pediatric healthcare providers for trans kids and gender-affirming care, started canceling appointments, canceling refills of prescriptions, and then later confirmed it publicly within about another 12 hours or so. We organized here. A lot of these actions, especially when it's coming at a federal level, cause a lot of people to, and a lot of the trans community was like, how do we fight back? We feel so powerless. But really, we're not locally powerless. There's a lot of ways we can fight back. With the children's situation, we formed a coalition. We partnered with CIR and Pride at Work, as well as youth orgs across the city, and built a campaign to fight back and pressure Children's National to not be complying early and not be complying eagerly, and also coordinated that campaign targeting pressure on DC elected officials, especially the Attorney General and the Health and Human Services department, because DC has extremely strong protections for the trans community. One of the strongest sanctuary laws in the country, actually, on a local level. We launched that with a letter campaign. Within 3 days of launching the letter campaign, we had over 91,000 letters targeting the various leadership at Children's, the DC Office of the Attorney General, and Health and Human Services. We gave them a week, in which case, at which point we then formed a picket line outside of the Attorney General's office. Within 48 hours of the picket line, which is about a week and a half after we launched the campaign, Children's reversed itself and began resuming care. They did so first quietly, without officially confirming it for anyone. And then when the federal restraining order was issued against that executive order, then they actually confirmed it publicly. These are examples of how we can fight back. The key, though, is we have to do it in solidarity. We could not have been nearly as successful without the help from CIR, without the help from our allies in the coalition, including a local abolitionist group, as well as other allied orgs that have existing relationships within DC. The key is forming those relationships and that solidarity. We're moving forward and continuing the pressure because the DC Attorney General has not signed on yet to the 14 attorneys general suing Trump over the various anti-trans EOs. And we are continuing to build the coalition.
Lyra, sorry to interrupt. Your cat muted you.
Thank you. Sorry about that. The Void Demon has his own ideas. The key I was trying to point out is we continue to build upon the coalition of labor and other community organizations to fight back. And I would also say one of the things is the trans population is just not large. One of the reasons we are targeted is we are visible, but we are also very small and therefore perceived as powerless. As roughly 1% of the population, a bit more, we cannot build the power we have all on our own as trans people. We have to build within solidarity within our community. And I would ask all of you spread across, get involved with your local DSA chapters. Lots of DSA chapters across the nation are doing great work fighting back on these when local institutions begin to comply with whatever federal directives come down. So get involved locally. We can fight back, and we are being successful. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Emma, and say hi to your cat as well. I love pet interruptions as well. Check out the call link that Emma's dropping for the TRBA mass call that's coming up. And I'm going to hand it over to Kiara, who is calling in from Florida and can tell us more about our nationally coordinated work on trans rights and bodily autonomy.
Thank you, Comrade Co-Chair Ashik. Appreciate it. Hi, I'm in Pensacola, Florida, and I'm also a co-chair of our Trans Rights and Bodily Autonomy Campaign Commission. It's very exciting to be able to say that sentence. Like, it's great to have a commission like that. We're going to be having a mass call on April 4th, and some folks are dropping links for that. And at that call, we're going to be wrapping up and having a panel basically on the different mobilizations around the country against Donald Trump's illegal executive order against healthcare for people aged 19 and under. As was mentioned, DC was at the front lines of that, and they've been able to see huge growth in their membership. They did a really great job. I mean, 30-40% new members. But I kind of want to also root, I guess, a little bit and some important things to note it is that the response to fascist attacks is we can't wait for anybody to come and save us on that. That's something where we can only protect each other. And that's what chapters have been able to do across the country from New York to Los Angeles. And doing that and having the capacity to do that, it's only possible in the context of a wider socialist movement rooted in labor and real power. So what we were able to see was chapters were able to quickly mobilize because of their ability to orientate around labor, talk to the CIRs, nurses unions, and different folks to be able to quickly mobilize, and also elected socialists standing up and coming to these events. So we're going to be talking about how those different events were organized in the call that was linked below, yeah, so it's really important to have different escalating pressure, but also something in the meantime folks can do. If you're really kind of confused about moves to take, mapping out your communities and finding groups active in fighting for the liberation of trans people and abortion access is a really great way to fight for bodily autonomy. In Florida, where we were not able to pass our abortion rights referendum, we were able to get a majority of voters, and in other states across the country, we've been able to pass and support abortion rights referendums that were more successful. So another way you can get involved is joining our commission. I just linked that below. And when you do that, you're able to connect to organizers across the country. We are educating each other and sharing notes, and also like connecting on like and brushing up on like organizing chops. So please come on by for that mass call on April 4th to learn about how we were able to respond very quickly and aggressively and reverse a lot of these bans. And beyond that, we will be having more opportunities going forward. We will have an all-member call for the commission, and I again welcome you to come by at that mass call. It's a great way to organize for your local community. Because oftentimes there really are not other organizations that take the approach that DSA is taking. So I appreciate you listening to me, and I will pass it along back to our facilitator.
Thank you so much, Lyra and Kiara. And yeah, just to really emphasize what both of them got across, this is work that is run by and for members who are just like normal people. Like most of us did not have a lot of organizing experience before joining DSA, and we're figuring it out together. We're not beholden to funders or just, like a board of people like or staff like telling us what to do. We're figuring it out based on our lives, our experience as workers, people in our communities. So the trans rights organizing is a really amazing example of that. There's no organization like this in the country that's doing things by and for just like normal people who are figuring out what, because we need to. Nobody else is going to do it for us. So on that note, I will hand it over to our next speaker, Marilia, who is going to tell you about our migrant rights organizing across the country.
Hi, everybody. Thanks, Ashik. Oh my God, I'm just so like feeling so so inspired hearing about all the fights that are happening and just all the organizing that DSA is doing and the wins. And I just know like us coming together is the only way we can get through this. So yeah, my name's Marilia. I use she, they pronouns. I'm in San Diego, and I'm one of the co-chairs of the International Migrant Rights Working Group. So I wanted to start actually with a personal story to kind of, because it was an experience I had recently with my mom, and I feel like it's relevant at this moment. So yeah, long story short, my mom just moved in with me last week, and it's just the thing that makes the most financial sense for us. And also being from Brazil, if you know anything about Latina families, some Latina moms secretly like hope their kids are never gonna move out to begin with. So I feel like this is some like a full circle kind of thing. But anyway, a few days ago, my mom was just feeling really, really sad, and she was crying, and there's a lot of big emotions coming up with this big life change, but a lot of bigger things were coming up. So I like sat and listened, and I gave her a hug, and the things she was saying were like breaking my heart. And she was blaming herself for like not having many resources. She blamed herself for not like having the right skills, like not having had worked enough to provide for my brother and sister and I. And she was like blaming herself for not having made the right choices in life. And I told her, like, Mom, this isn't the woman I see. Like, I see a woman who worked multiple jobs to keep the rent paid, and all while being paid under the table because she was undocumented, and which her employers like happily took advantage of. And I see a woman who was able to make it work for 3 kids, who had to have like a decent home to live in and to never have to go hungry, and for us to be able to study and pursue the things that we wanted to pursue. And I thought, like, also, this isn't just my story. This is my mom's story. Like, this is not just my story or my mom's story. This is the story of millions of undocumented immigrants who work extremely hard to take care of their families, to pay their taxes, and don't have as many rights as other people. And it's also the story of hundreds of millions of people in this country, a system that was built to benefit a really small selective group of people, and it's working exactly as it was designed. And this is, it's the same system where detention of immigrants is seen as profitable. GEO Group is a private prison company and a top ICE, which is Immigration and Custom Enforcement contractor. And they've seen their stock double since Trump took office. And even on a call, one of their executive chairmen called the detention of immigrants an unprecedented opportunity, which is wild. So this is really just a story of like a small racist group of people who will do anything to protect themselves, blame immigrants, blame Black folks, Indigenous, trans folks, to divert attention from what they're doing to actually destroy people's rights. And so one example you may have seen recently or read about or seen in social media, which Ashika also touched on, is Mahmoud Khalil, a recent Columbia grad who is an immigrant, an advocate for Palestinian rights, and is about to be a father. So Mahmoud was abducted by ICE just a few days ago for speaking out against the genocide in Palestine. And the Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, says this is not about free speech, but it's very clearly about free speech. It's an attack on dissent, on the right to free speech, and it's an attack on immigrants' rights. They're threatening to revoke his green card and deport him, but there is no place where this should happen to green card holders, citizens, or undocumented people. So, maybe the Trump regime is like testing the waters by making an example out of immigrants who exercise their right to free speech. But what if speaking out about race or gender or trans rights or climate change are next? So, we say no, we don't accept this. This stops now. We're tearing it down. We're building something better. I've met DSA members from all over the country who are coming together to defend their communities in these past few months. Just within like our chapters, I've seen chapters like North New Jersey that are fighting to shut down detention centers where people are being detained without dignity. I've seen in San Francisco and like Orange County and Chicago, New York. I've seen people have told me stories about going out into their communities and talking to folks, educating folks on their rights to defend themselves from ICE. There's people like in LA who are creating bold legislation to disrupt ICE's raids. And there's people coming together to devote themselves to create spaces for students. And there's people creating like networks of defense and alerting their communities in like Nashville, St. Louis, Charlottesville. So basically it's all to say this work is happening in DNC and we're fighting in solidarity across race and class. We're fighting for each other. We're fighting for people we don't know. And we're in a fight where the work is already happening. So join us. And there'll be some links in the chat to join our working group. And if you're not in DSA, join DSA. So, and we're also going to drop our toolkit. So read that and share it. Thanks, y'all.
Thank you, Marilia. That was beautiful and touched my heart, especially because I'm calling in from my parents' dining room while I'm visiting. So extremely relatable story. I am very excited to hand it over to our next guest, Dr. Taylor Walker, who is a family medicine doctor and abortion provider from the South and president of the Union Committee of Interns and Residents, CIR-SEIU, representing over 37,000 doctors in training, which is the fastest growing healthcare union in the country for the last few years. And in a great piece of synchronicity, I didn't even realize that CIR had been throwing down for the trans rights organizing. That was mentioned earlier on this call. We asked you as a guest because of the Medicaid connection, because we'll be calling about Medicaid cuts. So very excited to hand it over to you, Dr. Walker.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm so excited, Lyra, to see you on this call. As a new DC resident, it was really, really a highlight of the last few months to get to see that campaign unfold. So I'm really excited to share the space with you and really excited to be here. Thank you so much for the introduction and the warm welcome. You took many words out of my mouth, which I appreciate because I don't want to talk that long. So I am Dr. Taylor Walker. I'm the current president of CIR-SEIU. As Ashik mentioned, we are the nation's largest union of physicians, representing about 40,000 residents and fellows from all across the country. And we have enjoyed a period of massive growth over the last 4 years. I am going to get a little bit more into that in a few minutes, but I think as she mentioned, I'm also a family medicine physician. I did my medical training in Boston. I'm also an abortion provider. But I was raised in Memphis, Tennessee. And I think my lived experience has really inspired the work that I am fortunate enough to get to do every day. So if you'll indulge me, I will share a little bit about my personal story with you in just a few minutes. But just to start us off, I want to acknowledge the incredible speakers who are here. I was taking notes. I'm so excited. So this is recorded. I'm texting friends like, guess who I'm talking with? This is so cool. So to share the space with you guys is really incredible. You know, you heard Femi say, Trump doesn't care what kind of leftist you are. And Eric talking about how Trump has to break the federal workforce, aka the deep state, as my friends in DC affectionately call it, when they were card-carrying members of the deep state themselves, in order to implement his authoritarian agenda, right? Eric also highlighted that, you know, unions are sexy again, right? This is so exciting. And so I think we on this call know that organized labor is the single most effective tool that we on the left have in terms of making progressive change. You know, I talk all the time, like one reason I wanted to highlight Femi's you know, article about how Trump doesn't care what type of leftist you are, is that I talk all the time about how we on the left are pretty ineffective organizers because we are so concerned about being the most right? Like, you can't sit with us because I use a metal straw and you use a paper straw. And do you have any idea how bad almond milk is for the environment? Like, none of that matters, right? Like, you can go be right in the corner by yourself. I did recently speak on a political panel to a whole bunch of doctors, attending physicians, and medical students, and said that exact same thing, and then was like, oops, maybe I shouldn't say that out loud. But actually, we should say that out loud, because at this point, like, we're way past that, right? At this point, I don't care what kind of straw you use, right? Do you oppose fascism? Great, let's work together. Let's find some common ground. Let's align, right? Let's build some power together. Because at this point, like, simply being right is not enough. It's not adequate, especially when we are up against such a constant deluge of misinformation, right? So what do? Do we just like run away and hide and put our head in the sand and I'll move back to Tennessee and like be a primary care doctor? Like, no, right? I think we think about how to build power. How are we going to be more effective on the left, right? Republicans are amazing organizers. Like, Roe v. Wade was overturned because of a 50-year really dedicated organizing campaign. You know, I mean, do I like what they've been able to accomplish through their organizing? Absolutely not. But I think we on the left can take some notes, right? So I think in terms of how we build coalitions, how do we grow movements? I really think that it's an exceptionally simple answer, and it is through building relationships and sharing stories, right? I think that personal stories are so much more important and so much more effective than data will ever be, right? And these conversations don't happen in big WhatsApp chats, right? They don't happen on calls like this. However much I'm excited to be here and however much I'm enjoying being here and however important sharing this space is with like-minded people, like-minded organizations, right? Like, what really moves the needle is having one-on-one conversations. You know, on the subway, on the plane, on the way, you know, here, on the way to an event, right? In waiting rooms, wherever you find yourself. Somebody has a Jasmine Crockett sticker on a water bottle, like, start talking to them, right? Tell them about DSA. Tell them about, like, hey, have you heard what's happening in the Texas House? Just every single day, one-on-one, sharing your personal stories, like what we heard about what's happening on the ground in DC, right? I think to kind of model what I'm talking about, if you'll indulge me a little bit, I'll share more about my story. As I mentioned, I was born and raised in Memphis, Tennessee. I learned firsthand the importance of programs like Medicaid that really support the common good when my mom was diagnosed with ALS when I was 10 years old. She was sick for 7.5 years. And for those of you familiar with ALS, you know, it is an absolutely devastating and debilitating terminal neurologic condition. So I lovingly say that I was sort of raised by hospice nurses, right? those hospice nurses were provided by Medicaid. I am a blonde white girl, right, in the United States. And I was basically raised by hospice nurses, paid for by Medicaid, because my mom was diagnosed with ALS when she was 40, and it was just my sister and me, right? In my early 20s, I then found myself facing an unintended pregnancy. I was Tennessee did not expand to Medicaid, right? So I wasn't eligible for any assistance. And so I did not have health insurance. And I had to navigate really dangerous trap laws that Tennessee had put in place on top of not expanding Medicaid. Tennessee put trap laws in place to make it more difficult for patients to access abortion and for clinics to provide abortions. So I navigated those 2-week waiting periods, right? Having to wait until I could hear the heartbeat on an ultrasound, right? To get care at Planned Parenthood. So it was after that experience that I decided, like, you know what, fuck this. Like, I'm going to go to medical school. I'm going to be a doctor and make sure that none of my patients experience what I just experienced, right? And I want to go choose a specialty that prioritizes public health, that prioritizes health policy. And eventually that led me into physician organizing and CIR. So I am blown away every day by the opportunity to serve as the president of CIR and to be in these spaces with you guys. You know, I think in addition to building power through organizing, one of my main goals as president is to inspire our members to see themselves as laborers first and physicians second. Because if we really want to protect our patients and our communities, then we have to stand in solidarity, like active solidarity, right? Solidarity is a verb, with the wider labor movement and with organizations like the DSA, who are all fighting for justice and fighting for collective liberation, right? You know, I'll say it again, like unions are sexy again, right? People are understanding the need to build movements and to fight for collective liberation. CIR has, I think I mentioned this, doubled in size since 2020. And I think that's in large part due to just this collective referendum against the corporatization of healthcare and the prioritization of profits over people, right? I think our members are seeing and recognizing the need for a total overhaul of this violent, oppressive system in which we are all forced to exist, and are starting to see the union as an avenue for that change, right? So CIR has always been a really progressive union, but in the last few years, we've had the opportunity to fight for things like racial justice, reproductive justice. We understand that reproductive justice is a racial justice issue, right? For trans rights, as you heard earlier, for Medicare for all and Medicaid protections, like doing lobbies like this, like what we're going to do after this. For immigrant rights, protecting our patients against ICE. And we've officially joined the BDS movement, and we're a driving force behind Oakland becoming the first city in the country to divest, which is really, really exciting. And I think evidence of what we are able to do when we build those movements and we implement our vision at starting at the local level, starting at the state level, right? And we really do build that coalition, and then we enact those the changes that we are working towards. So I was fortunate enough to get to share these stories with legislators during a lobby day with SEIU a few weeks ago, and I can promise you the only things that the legislators and their staff wrote down were snippets of our individual and personal stories, right? So I really encourage all of you to share your personal narratives with strangers as you come into contact with them, right? In spaces with your friends, or on Zoom meetings like this, if you feel so inspired, so that we can keep growing this movement and protecting our communities. Thank you so much again for having me, and I look forward to phone banking with you all soon.
Thank you so much. So you heard a lot there. That is doctor's orders. So I'm going to hand it over to Colleen, who can give us a call to action and transition us to the next part of this.
Awesome. Thank you all so much. I'm Colleen. I'm one of the National Political Committee members of DSA. And wow, thank you so much, Taylor, for sharing those words. As you said, solidarity is a verb, and that's what we're about to do tonight. We've spent a lot of time talking about work that has already been happening, but we don't want to just sit here and listen to these stories. We have an opportunity right now to be a part of that work and to take action. And the work ahead of us, if you have any takeaway from all of the stories, is very clear, right? we have to build solidarity as broad and wide and deep of a net of solidarity as possible, because although our enemies have mountains and mountains of wealth, we have millions and millions of people on our side. And as we've seen with this Trump administration, they're doing exactly what we expected of them to do. But what they didn't expect is how quickly their politics would become so unpopular, right? Their grand coalition is already fracturing. And so we have to be ready to take advantage of the contradictions of that and be ready to move and continue to break apart this fascist regime. And, you know, as we've heard from other folks' stories of these different communities organizing, of different like aspects of this organizing in this moment, the administration is trying to pick off different groups and trying to turn us against each other, trying to control us with fear, trying to make us believe that we're not worth fighting for. But we have to know that we are, and we do that through practice, right? And we have to fight for ourselves and fight for this vision of a world that really embodies those values. And that is something that sets us apart. I saw a question in the chat. What sets you apart from other organizations? We also have a vision of a world that puts people over profit, that really puts into action the idea that life is sacred, right? Where life is precious, and we want to live that. And that's why this issue of Medicare and Medicaid is so important. Because the Medicaid system is one of the few social safety nets that we have in the United States. They're trying to dismantle it for very good reason, right? To continue this idea of who's deserving and who is not. And we're going to reject that, right? They're going to say that there's fraud and waste and abuse happening, but we know that the fraud and waste and abuse is the for-profit system that puts the shareholder profit above people's ability to receive the care that they need without the fear of financial ruin, or without, you know, being forced to work when they physically cannot, their bodies cannot allow them to work. The fraud here is the billionaires who are dismantling the already threadbare safety nets that everyday people depend on in order to transfer even more wealth to the richest people who have ever existed in human history, right? And again, solidarity is a verb, like Dr. Walker said. So before you leave this call, we're going to share 2 petition links because we are both fighting to protect Medicaid. So we're going to contact our reps to say, no cuts to Medicaid, no imposition of work requirements, because everyone has a right to health care, whether or not you are able to work. And we shouldn't make it harder for people to access care, especially those where it's already hard enough. And we also have a positive vision, right? We know a single payer, not-for-profit healthcare system is the solution to a lot of what we see in healthcare right now. So contact your reps to protect folks from those cuts, protect yourself from the cuts if you're on Medicaid. I know I have definitely been on it. And then also fight for a single payer system. The next thing we're going to be doing, and it's a little bit tricky, but stick with me. We're going to have another Zoom link where you can join to phone bank people tonight to put some pressure on 2 strategically selected representatives of Congress to send a very clear message to them about their need to protect Medicaid. And this is really important, right? This is about building that broad and deep mass politics net of people. We have to be inviting people into our movement and taking action with us all the time if we're going to beat all of these billionaires and all of their organized money. And we can't do that if we're not reaching out to people. So I think someone is going to share in the chat a Zoom link. Please join us on that Zoom. We're going to do a training. If you've never done phone banking before, this is the perfect event for you because we're going to do a training. We're going to walk you through how to do it. We'll have folks on to support you in doing that work. But the organizing comes from doing. We have to build those muscles. So please join us. And here is that Zoom link. And we will catch you all over there. So solidarity, I'm going to hop over there so we can start letting people in. And I'll pass it back to you, Ashik.
All right, thank you so much to all of our speakers. So yeah, we're going to keep sharing the link. We're going to keep this webinar open. So if any, we're going to transition to some music so you can hang out here for a few minutes if you want, but we're just going to keep dropping that link for the phone bank. So while I'm chattering, you can just feel free to transfer to that. Thank you so much, hundreds of you for joining. You know, like amid everything that's going on, it's just amazing to see all the energy that we're building together, like against everything that's happening. Like we're an organization in DSA that is just collecting so much of the anxiety and fear and anger that we're feeling against everything happening in this country, and we're turning it into collective action. And that's the best antidote to just sitting alone on your phone, like doom scrolling, like seeing all this horrible information that's coming in all the time. It's totally overwhelming, but being part of an organization like this is really what helps make it bearable, because we have a vision for the world that we need and we know is possible, and we're building it together. So solidarity, everybody. We'll just keep dropping that link. Again, join DSA if you're not already a member. But yeah, please join us for the next hour if you can, or just for a few minutes. We'll be doing the training on the phone bank. So yeah, this is just a pretty low level ask. And we know, like I personally am weird about using the phone. Like I'm a texting millennial at this point, but making calls, we'll be making calls to voters to contact the representative. So you won't be the one talking to your representative. It's a good way to connect with people who are probably feeling anxious and tired and overwhelmed too. So it's also just having a nice conversation with somebody if they pick up, to be like, hey, are you pissed off about what's happening? Let's help save our services. So we'll just keep dropping the link. Thank you for hundreds of folks who are here. You're welcome to drop off, but I really hope you can tune in to the other Zoom and then help take action for a few minutes. Solidarity, everyone.